Hey everyone, welcome back to the Nav.it Files. I'm Maya here with Erin. Hey Erin.
Hey Maya, hey everyone.
We're really excited to have you guys back with us. It's the end of the week and also the last weekend of January, or last day really of January. So we had a few really great episodes, I think, on credit and different ways in which you can improve credit and kind of what credit's all about. And today we're going to wrap up the week with a real talk, and we're also going to talk about the looming coronavirus. And you might be asking why the heck we're talking about this. But we're talking about it because it's actually been impacting the markets and scaring the shit out of some high-powered men. So we love to talk about that.
And you.
And me. Oh, yeah. Well, to be fair, I think I will go into the difference in the gender, which will tie in well to your topic of real talk. But
yes.
I think, so coronavirus is a thing. If you've been living under a rock, it's a pandemic. It's originated out of Wuhan, China. Yeah. And that is a city of 11 million people strong, who have now been quarantined. And they, like any pandemic, I mean, of course, they caught it once it spread to other regions. So I think it's now in like 11 different countries. India just had their first case, which is very concerning and stressful because obviously that's a hugely dense population of people. Yeah. Russia's closed the border to China.
Yeah.
Which is huge for the oil markets. So basically, the reason why we're covering this topic today is because I write our market recaps every week. And as I told Erin, as I was going through, we basically go by sector. So if you haven't subscribed to the newsletter, I highly encourage you to do so because you'll get a market recap every week. They also live on our blog.
I plug that because I love them because they're short and sweet. They give you the highlights, and if you want to stay up on like what's happening in the world, it's a perfect way to do it. So, okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I agree. And the concept is that it's structured like your portfolio would be. So we separate by sector, and then we report on like the most trending U.S. sector news. So, of course, I was writing this thing today, and across every sector, it's like coronavirus. Like, nobody knows how to predict the future because of coronavirus. And I wanted to talk about this topic kind of high level because I think it's frightening and it's horrible for anybody who's, personally impacted by the virus. I think it's already infected over 8,000 people. But at the same time,
worldwide. Not in America, worldwide.
Yeah, worldwide.
Yeah.
Clear distinction.
I know, and I also, I'm a public health specialist.
Yes.
So when you're done, I really want to explain to people the symptoms that they need to look out for and when they need to go to the doctor. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, that's great because I didn't prepare any of that. I'm just going to tell you how it impacts your bottom line. So, so basically, what I wanted to talk about is fear-mongering in the markets, and the important piece to this is to realize that the markets don't always reflect the economy, right? Yes. So the economy has many factors, like, as we all know, job development, employment rates, blah, 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 blah. The markets are much more volatile, though I want to use that term lightly because you shouldn't be afraid to engage in them. You should just, if you're thinking about investing, you don't have to be a stock trader. You don't have to be trading all your oil stocks out or getting rid of all of your copper stocks right now because this is happening in one of the biggest economies in the world. But I think it's important to know that you shouldn't be fearful or act irrationally when things like global pandemics do arise.
And irrationally would be pull out all your money. Don't do that.
Irrationally would be selling out all of your stocks because sure, the headlines, and I think our news, along with most democratic news sources in the world, are culprits of this. They love fear-mongering.
Totally.
So even if they're super smart analysts, they're writing for CNBC or whatever they're typically reporting on, coronavirus is giving them an edge to their sector reporting. So they're all bringing in how coronavirus is impacting every single sector of the market. And so what you really have to dig through, and hopefully what the market recap is helping with, but I think is important to note, it's like once you whittle through all the noise, you can actually see that there's some pretty strong actors. For example, GE had their best performing quarter in over a year. And I think that, they're impacted by all of those sectors, right? GE is a massive, massive company that goes cross-sectionally in terms of its market impact.
Yes, and also I think you're so right. It's just an actual symptom of how ridiculous our media cycles are, of how they have to be more dramatic and more, and it's always fear-based, right, to get the splashy headline, to get eyeballs. So it's ridiculous. Apple and Facebook just had better than expected returns, and Facebook, but their price dropped, right? Isn't that fascinating? Because
Zuck lost $4 billion in net worth today.
In one day.
You know why? Do you know why? Because we've been talking about the tech bubble, and we're in the tech bubble, but it's because their expenses soared 51% compared to 2018.
God, why?
They had an influx of 51%.
What? I mean, they've had a bad year, but is that litigation? What is that?
It's a whole bunch of things. Litigation is a part of it because Zuck's, been on the Hill basically the entire year, and he's their chairman. But I think it's also, I will use this now lightly, I think it's industry uncertainty as to how Facebook will continue to capitalize on social media into the Gen Z market, because Gen Z is turning away, from these social networks.
Yeah.
So we're having every generation is resembles some cause of the last of the previous generation, and the full mentality, consumer mentality is super cyclical. Right. So our parents are also kind of combative with social channels and a little skeptical. It makes sense that our kids are feeling the exact same way, because they're having the inverse identity and
they're seeing the impact.
Behavioral approach than their parents, because kids want to be the opposite of their parents.
Yes, exactly.
So Facebook, it's a whole lot of things. Also, they've they've never really been profitable. They're just selling all of your data. That's how they're trying to hit. They're hitting profitability.
And now the consumers are onto it.
Right. And I mean, when was the last time? We have a business, so we have to be on Facebook. But if you have a friend who doesn't have a digital business, are they ever on Facebook?
No, or just individuals. If I didn't have to be, I wouldn't.
I don't even think John knows how to log into his Facebook. Yeah. But his Instagram all the time, right? So it's one of those weird things. They obviously own Instagram.
I love Instagram.
Anybody who's on WhatsApp or Instagram right now will see that Facebook is doing their rebranding of saying they never used to use their parent brand, but they're now putting their parent brand of Facebook on all of the apps.
I know, but it's gonna just taint it.
Yeah, that's the irony. It's having the impact. So we're talking about coronavirus.
Yes.
And I wanted, so part of this news cycle and fear-mongering stems from, this is how the markets always work, right? Every week, all the time. They look at these top analysts, they look at the top hedge funders of the world, they look at the top strategists, they look at their interviews, what they've been asked that week, and they react according to what those influencers say.
Yeah.
It was
the original influencers.
Well, yeah, they're the hedge funders are the original influencers.
Literally. That's amazing.
Yeah, so the top dog of hedge funders, Ray Dalio, we will do a lot more segments on him. He just came out with I'm not going to scare anyone, an interesting white paper that I'm doing some more back-end research on, but we'll report on later. He's basically, so he is the CEO of Bridgewater Capital, which is the biggest hedge fund in the world. And he is, if you guys have ever seen Billions, an older version of the Billions guy. Not I've never met the guy, but that's who he's supposed to be. He's supposed to just be this giant, right?
Yeah.
And he came out, I guess, in the last 24 hours or whatever it was, saying, why are all you news sources, why are you asking me about this pandemic in China? I have no fucking clue what's going to happen. And the reason is because, you know, historically we haven't really seen this happen, especially like paired with our political landscape and our global political landscape. So it's surpassed SARS. And SARS, again, like I can point to SARS was horrible and Corona is horrible, but it didn't really have a lasting impact on the market. Like the market fluctuated and dropped significantly, especially like oil.
But Corona could be the same thing. Like but Corona could be the same thing.
Well, that's what they're saying. They're now starting to react more aggressively towards fear because it's now surpassed SARS.
But SARS wasn't that bad. SARS, they just made a big deal about too, right? It was contained, and also the way it was transmitted, it was different.
Right. So do you want to give our PSA announcement of what you should do?
Okay. So if you feel fever, cough, and shortness of breath, symptoms may appear 2 to 14 days after exposure. And if you have been to China within the past 2 weeks and developed those symptoms, call your doctor. And if you've been in contact with anyone who's been in China in the last 2 weeks and you feel those symptoms, call your doctor or go to CDC website and they will figure it out and you can contact them.
And I mean, my scientist, I recently learned, because again, I've clearly been just like focused on the markets and I haven't been actually listening to like public health.
I don't know anyone that's been to China.
Okay. Yeah. I hear that this virus is actually something that's been around. It's not anything new. And it's actually often really easily treatable. Totally. But the different strain of the virus, it was initially passed on to humans through bats.
It's always bats. Bats are the worst.
It was like bats and one other.
This actually says camel. I like corona. So this coronavirus is a zoonotic disease. So that, you know, it's passed from animals to humans. Most of these are. SARS was, influenza is, even HIV was a retrovirus that came from, you know, different types of primates. I could go on forever, but the point is, it's like I could digress really easily.
We really don't want you to, Erin.
But I'm trying not to. But normally, bats are the worst because they fly everywhere and excrement goes everywhere. So then it goes into, and SARS, I think SARS was when it was into like the pig food, then pigs ate the food, then humans
humans eat the pig.
Right. It's the pigs and chickens. I'm telling you. It's like, and then you get the avian influenza, which is birds. It's the birds really are complicated because they migrate it through very large spaces and bring the disease with them.
God, and I only ever eat chicken. This is very concerning.
Yeah, be careful. I mean, this one isn't. I don't think it. I need to figure out. I'm like now frantically. I don't remember how this one actually is passed. It's probably It's probably just through like a common cold.
It was. Oh well, yeah, I think so because the first case in the U.S. of it passing, like you said, human happened this week. Yeah.
So it's probably just like wash your hands. Like the influenza, basically basic flu stuff. Mm-hmm. Wash your hands, stay away. If you're sick, stay home and call a doctor.
Well, I know. So you try to end this week on such a downer note, but I know to address it.
If you want me to digress, I helped respond to the Ebola outbreak. Do you know that story?
No, I don't know that story.
Yeah, so towards the end, I took a contract when I was doing public health to go help the CDC in Guinea, one of the places it was at, develop their response system afterwards. For like, it was just like they hadn't had a case for a while, so they were needing to rebuild the public health system, and it was amazing. And then I got flagged. This is so annoying. So that our public health system. We'll end on a positive note.
Yeah, let's.
The CDC in the United States, our public health system and state level is phenomenal. So I got flagged. So they knew, coming back in, I my passport stamp, I get in a system that I've been in some sort of possible exposure. So literally I got a call within 2 hours of coming back to my home, and they told me it was going to happen from my state public health authority. And he called me every day at 11 a.m. And if I didn't answer, keep calling back, then I would have to check my temperature for the 14-day possible exposure period. Right, and log it. It was all through their system. They knew everyone. And then for 6 months after that, every time I traveled, I had this big X on my face on the passport, and I had to go through a health check every time, even though there was no way I would be affected.
Well, but so this is, I love that. That's a really positive note.
Our system
and
is amazing.
next week, because I need to read more into this because I just saw it, but I would like to, maybe we should do like a little side segment because I'm curious about the health screenings in the airport, because I think it was people traveling from China to Japan. I don't know, somebody's having some issue with it.
Well,
so I'm curious to learn more.
My experience has, and it depends, this was Ebola, but it's probably set up the same way, is that they know they flag where you're coming from.
Right.
And then it's a pain. So what I ended up having to do, if I had any connecting flight, which is highly annoying, is I always had to have 4 hours in between my flights. I missed multiple flights, but you get taken to, the public health authority in the customs area. And then they do for Ebola, it was temperature check and history of where you've been and all that. I bet for Corona, it's the same thing, though. It's just fevers and coughing and exposure. And then what's amazing about public health and epidemiology is that they trace your contacts. So they can do, where you've been, who you've been in contact with. So then if you do have it, they can quickly go back to all the people you've been exposed to or you've exposed to the virus and try and stop it faster than otherwise you would know. So the whole thing about this is that humans who feel sick, don't be heroes and don't think it's just a common cold when you're possibly exposed. Like, go to the doctor.
Also, don't get on that cruise that you were going to get on, because there's now an Italian cruise ship that has quarantined everybody on the ship with the sick person.
Are you kidding?
Okay. Yeah, so also evaluate your investments in cruise ships too. But I will end on a positive investing note to just tie it back into the fact that this is a money podcast. Also with, I hate to say it, but when pandemics and topics like this come up, there is often a certain industry that performs very well. And in the case of public health, it's often industrial or rather materials that are used for the production of cleaning goods. So like Dow is crushing it right now.
You say who? Dow?
Dow. DOW is a company, and they basically produce a lot of the chemicals and a lot of the things that are go into, your cleaning supplies. Yeah. Just saying.
Same thing in Ebola, like when no one had enough supplies. So it was like 10 companies it was insane, the market value of companies that were producing equipment for the response. Yeah.
But we're actually really good people, so we're going to move on and talk about real talk. Erin, you got a real talk? We have to wrap it up soon, so.
Okay, so the real talk recently we have really been struggling. One of our key pillars is inclusivity and ensuring that, people feel safe. And one of the things that we've been struggling with, figuring out our voice in our brand and when I'm pitching, when we're talking to people, is how do we place value on the feminine experience and talk about the inequalities that have occurred historically in the financial sector, like women didn't have access until 45 years ago, but also not make it an us versus them and an exclusionary situation, even for, people transgender, LGBTQ, people of color, all the other, and men, because they need money too, and they need to be part of this conversation. So how do we broaden our conversation into what I think is now the truth of our generation that's been happening in the last couple of years, of just like you're saying, actually, ironically, about the cycles of the consumer and the generational things. Like, we are now, it's not acceptable anymore for us to exclude, right? Like we're only kind of coming into that moment. So we've been doing a lot of brainstorming and brand awareness exercises and figuring it out. And we concluded, which is so exciting, that really the core of what we're trying to do is we're trying to change the narrative around money to make it talk about fear-mongering, eliminate the fear, build confidence, make it a positive thing. Money is just a part of life. Like, it doesn't have to be scary. It can just be something positive and practical, and gender inclusive. So this is where we're landing on, we are here to elevate the feminine experience. We're here to have women talking about money like this. That's never happened really before, but also to say, hey, this is something that can be accessible to everyone, and we can show everyone succeeding. We can show LGBTQ people of color succeeding with money, women succeeding, and men, and what are their stories and how do we learn from everyone? So it's been a really fun exercise to really like, our core value is to change the narrative around money, and we're ready to do that.
I love it. I'm so excited. We've got
Yeah.
some fun soft launches coming up next week, and then our big, huge launch in the middle of the month. So we will keep you all posted. And thanks so much for joining us. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.